imagine, son.
All right, welcome back to the Comic Lounge. My name is Ryan. I have my co-host Jen. Another episode of Thought Balloon. And today we're going to be talking about print versus digital, kind of the pros and cons, what we like, what we don't like about each respective one. And I'll start. I have a hard time reading digitally. I've tried. Well, that's not true. I haven't even tried. I like the feeling of the book in my hand, and I just can't get away from that. My brother has tried for years. Dylan has tried. The closest I come to reading digitally is when we get the advances from Image or if I get Dark Horse, so I get IDW, whatever that is, or like at the shop, Diamond will send advances even before the publishers send them to us as reviewers. And I've checked it out that way, but like even then, like I had Pulp for 2.5 months before it came out, and I just didn't read it, because to me it ruins the experience. Like I like the tactile feeling of the paper in my hands, like the different paper stocks. So all that really like is important to me in the experience when I'm reading a story, when I'm reading a comic book. Now I know that digital has a place. I know what your kind of feelings are in terms of like the environment and the imprint that we're leaving on the planet when we're reading a book. Like it's paper. It's not, you know what I mean? Like we're taking from the environment to create these things. But yeah, it's hard. It's hard. It's not like I'm not reading a comic book. I feel like, oh, I'm reading a tablet. You know what I mean? Like, or I'm reading a computer. It's not. I don't know. It's very hard for me to switch over. If now let's say like there is no comic books, the only way to read is digitally, then of course I'm not going to stop reading. But as long as there is a print versus digital option, I will always take the print over digital, because I love hardcovers too. Like I like getting those deluxe editions. I will have the comic book, the single issues, and I will go buy the hardcover. Or if it's a trade first, I'll get the trade, and then if they eventually release the deluxe edition, I'll do the same. Like all of Ed Brubaker's stuff, I have the trades. Once the hardcovers come out, I sell the trades, and then I get the hardcover. Middle West is coming out with a hardcover. I knew that, so I got rid of the trades, and I'm like, I'm gonna get the hardcover. So like maybe I'm part of the problem. Like maybe that's part of the reason. Like I will buy every format, so they will continue to put out multiple formats, which is making an even huger imprint on the ecosystem. But I don't know.
That's actually, it's a really complicated subject because there's a lot of like little arguments that we can go through. I agree that the experience is completely different. In terms of experience, I prefer paper, that's for sure. I'm just wondering if we look at the future, especially for the environment, like you said, because the singles issues, they use a lot of paper. It's a lot of plastic also, because you have a plastic bag, a cardboard and stuff like that. And although that, yes, it might be recyclable, although we don't throw away issues and stuff like that, it's a lot of the comic world is a lot of over buying. You buy the singles, you buy the variant covers, you buy this and this and this, and then you buy the trades, and then you buy the hardcover. It's a lot. And yes, it's to please a large public. I'm just wondering if at some point we can switch all the singles to a digital version and having just a trade on the hardcover, because yes, the singles, it's really nice, but it also brings another problem, right? It also brings the scalpers and the inflation of price and this whole dark world of comics. And that's just, you will never have that with trade paperbacks and hardcovers. And although, yes, it's good for, like when you think about economy, it's good for the money, it's good for the industry, but is it really a positive experience as a reader? And if we switch all the singles to digital, we won't have this whole dark world of eBay.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I'm just wondering if at some point switching to digital will bring a more positive experience to the reader. And by switching only singles to digital, and keeping the trades paper or the hardcover paper, you still have this experience and you can still keep up monthly or weekly but digital. That's just what I'm wondering. And I'm just wondering if the comic industry would really suffer from um not having this specular world, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I love how positive you always are when you have your ideas, because like, and it's good. It's good to be positive. It's good to have these like ideas that are a little bit, maybe some people would strongly disagree with, but like the reasoning and the thought behind your ideas is great, and it makes sense, right? But you have to look at it in this respect. Go on eBay and look up certain hardcovers. Go up on eBay and look at certain trade paperbacks. They go just they get just as out of control price wise as a single issue does. If a
But
hardcover is out of
why
print,
though? I'm just wondering why.
because it's out of print. Like I'll give you a perfect example. I was talking about Ed Brubaker, right, and how I always buy the hardcovers.
Yeah.
As of this moment in time, the volume 1 hardcover is out of print. People sell it for hundreds of dollars. The I'll think of another one. The Silver Surfer by Dan Slott and Michael Allred, which is beloved by a lot of people. That omnibus is out of print right now. Goes for $300. It's $75 cover price. So there is still the ability where there is a way, there is a will, and eBayers and speculators will find a way to price gouge stuff because it's not in print. Now, the interesting thing to bring up too is you're saying that okay, let's do single issues in digital and still do trades in hardcovers. Comic book stores would not be able to sustain a steady income if that was the case. If you're thinking about every 6 months there's a new product as opposed to every week there's a new product, right? That would be horrible for the shop. I don't know how a shop could essentially. Why are you going to buy the digital copy from a shop is what I'm saying, right? Like, how do they get that revenue? They wouldn't have that steady revenue of money every week flowing into the shop. And already, like a comic book store, it's not a huge money maker. They don't make a lot of money. There's too many. Like, we have Comixology, right? We have the Marvel app. I'm sure at one point, like if it went digital, all these publishers would have their own apps. Image would have an app, Boom would have an app, and then like they don't need the comic book stores in that respect anymore. And then do they start like just selling their trade paperbacks through Amazon instead of even like why do we need the direct market? Now I don't think that publishers feel that way. I think that for the most part publishers realize we need the direct market. That's what's sustaining the industry right now. We talk about recycling.
Yeah.
The only way it gets recycled is if people recycle it. Nobody's recycling their comic books. They're holding on to them. I can look at your shelf, you know what I mean? And I can see, like, you're not getting rid of those. Those things aren't getting recycled. If you look behind me in that corner, there's 9 short boxes of comic books. Those aren't getting recycled. I have those listed on eBay to sell because, like, I'm trying to clear the space because look how much space comic books take up. Now, we could also talk about that, print versus digital. If we're reading digitally, our house is not overrun by paper. A pile of boxes is not gonna collapse and kill us one day because we have so much sitting in a room. But yeah, like I think it is something that should be looked at, right? That how much more can we continue to leave an imprint
To
on?
produce, can we
Right.
at least reduce, because there is so much out there, and I'm not against singles. It's not what I'm saying. I
No,
love
yeah,
collecting singles. Like, I
of
love
course.
buying different variant covers and stuff. I'm just wondering if we look in the future, and is the comic world gonna survive if we keep doing the same formula over and over again? It comes to the same thing that I discussed on my channel. Like, if we don't talk about diversity, if we don't talk about improving the comic world, how do we expect the future to go? Is it gonna keep evolving if we never talk about it, or is it gonna stick to this old way of thinking? So I'm just wondering if we can apply that to also singles, because that's a really old way of thinking, right? Because I'm not, you're the connoisseur, you have all this knowledge. So I'm just wondering if, um, did it evolve? Like, I think we have more trade paperbacks and hardcovers than way, way back when the comic started, right? Because I think it started
Yes,
with
you're right.
singles,
Yeah,
right?
no, it took a long. You're very right. You're 100% on the money. Trade paperbacks weren't even a thing. You know what I mean? Like you can go back to the 80s, and that's when they kind of started, but you didn't see every story arc getting a trade. You didn't see writers writing for the trade paperback. They wrote every issue as if it was somebody's first comic book. So Marvel and DC, if you would have gotten into comics when I did in the early 90s, it would have been easier for you to jump into a Marvel or a DC comic because they made them very accessible
Mm-hmm.
to jump in. Like I jumped in on a Spider-Man comic, it was issue 300 and something, but I was able to jump in and not feel like, oh my god, what's happening. But yes, with trade paperbacks being more of a regular thing, with people writing, I mean, I think Image is a perfect example, right? You can tell like they're writing for the trade paperback.
Mm-hmm.
Like they work better as a trade paperback. But in that respect, like why not just release it as a trade paperback? Why even have single issues? And you know what I mean? Like you can make that argument as well. I'll tell you one thing before, and then I'll let you give some thoughts. Like if you look at what DC has been doing, right? Like they're releasing Milestone Comics came back. For anybody that doesn't know what Milestone Comics is, it's an imprint that a bunch of black and minority creators created in the 90s that focused on minority characters, and it lasted a couple years. It's being brought back, but as digital only, a couple digital only series or digital first series. That kind of pissed off retailers because now we don't have that option to have it in the shops. Who's going to hand sell you a book digitally? Nobody, right? There's nobody that's on the digital platform that's going to be like, oh, check this book out. Like all that we have is Google that will, is reading your phone and knows what you're looking at and will show you something accordingly. I could hand sell a book in a shop better than something a digital ad will show you, right? So I know that pissed off a lot of retailers because like if comic books become just a digital first or digital only, that's taking money from the shop. They don't have a way to make money off of that, and whereas they would if they printed it. But again, like I also being in the shop, I see how much overprinting there is. I see how much we return, and Diamond makes you tear the covers off of books when you return them. So we're literally ripping comic books up.
Which is really a shame because there's so much they could do with what you return. They could give it away to schools. They could give it away to people in need just to expand that comic love. That's what I mean. There's so much you can do, but the industry is a little bit stuck in their linear view, right? So there's so much that Diamond could do. I don't know if it's a legal reason or whatever, but like I'm gonna do like a comparison, right? So I work in the cosmetic and skincare industry, and some brands, instead of when you have products that you have to return, like when it's discontinued or whatever, like when your favorite makeup brand is discontinued, you have most of the time to destroy the product and throw it away. But imagine if we could put it in a bin and give it to women in need.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
it's the same thing for video games. Nintendo. We have right now in Montreal. We have a lot of stores closings. It's a rental, like uh, it's called Videotron, but it's like a rental video game movie thing, and all the stores are closing. But Nintendo, they don't want to give away displays and stands. The store has to destroy it and throw it away. Imagine all the collectors out there who are ready to pay a large price to get those. And I think that's really what's my problem with this single is that where does it go? Because yes, as a collector, you keep them in your shelves, but I'm sure, 200% sure that not the singles are bought, right? There's a lot that are thrown out. There's a lot that are still in the warehouses. There's a lot that are like stagnant and nobody think about it. But because we overproduced,
Yeah.
And it's not just overproducing the same number. We produce variant covers. We produce I don't know, like a bunch of different things, like first print, second print, fifth print, whatever, whatever. Like, do we really need all that stuff? You know?
No, we don't. I mean, yeah, I agree.
And aside from keeping the stores open, what does a single really do aside from bringing money for the comic stores? Is it there's the
It's
experience, I get it,
it's
but
also
there's
the collectability.
the
Be-
collectability.
Yeah, I mean, like, you take away the collectability if it's a trade paperback. How? I mean, like, it's not like.
But then I
uh,
could turn the same argument that you said that you can collect hardcovers and trade paperbacks because it's still selling on eBay and you have different like editions and it's out of prints and stuff like that. You still have this collecting effect without having the singles. I get that it's not as much and I get that it's not as exciting, but if we think again past that and if we can think about evolving and going with the flow, because for me, like you said, for me environment is something really important, and unfortunately comics is something that goes a little bit against that, and it just hurt my values when I think about all that plastic and
yeah,
papers. And do we have other alternatives? Like i I don't like to read digital, but I still read a little bit. I cut the singles that I buy. My pull list is like 2 numbers now. It's like 2 series, and I just try to cut more and more and more and buy only trades and hardcovers, and I still enjoy the hobby. I know that as collectors, it's not as important, but like you said, you still have hardcovers that are sold on eBay because they're out of prints and stuff like that. So you still have that collecting effect without having 300 variant covers to collect and buy $500 on eBay and going to waste, you know?
right. But that next Man 21 right behind you is more important than Hellboy Volume 1, right? Like, that is the first appearance of Hellboy. Hellboy Volume 1 is not the first appearance. So in that respect, like, the collectability is there. Nobody buys a trade because, oh, this contains the first appearance of a character. Like, the collectability is not the same, right?
Yeah.
I mean, but I get what you're saying. I definitely
But
think.
isn't it a little bit the cancer of our hobby to have like first appearance of this character? What was it like? This is that was a thing with Spider-Man. I think at some point, or a superhero from Marvel, and it's like this wasn't the real first appearance because his name was mentioned in the previous single, but it was only his name. But this is the real first appearance that really counts. Like at some point, isn't it like a little bit extreme to think that way?
It's very extreme. I just talked about this with Mario, and I think one of the main reasons with that's a whole nother issue though. That's like, I think grading comic books is what made that a problem, because now it's not just, oh, this is the first appearance. No, this is the first cameo appearance. No, this is the first appearance of the character on the cover. Who fucking gives a shit if it's the first appearance? That's it. That's all it should be. Should it be a first cameo? Should it be a first cover? First mention? Like, I agree with that. That gets a little ridiculous.
And maybe not without like my point is maybe not like having singles disappearing altogether. It's maybe reducing a little bit. Like making it less singles. Like I said, like when you go into a comic store, you have sometimes like 5 different type of the same number with different covers and stuff like that. Why not stick to 1 or 2 and just reducing? It's all about, for me, it's all about reducing. And if we reduce, there's going to be even more value, right? If they reduce the numbers and stuff like that, people are going to like, the value is going to go higher, no?
The value will go higher for the collector, and I hate to say this, I'm gonna put like my like businessman hat on right now. That there's not as much money. They're not gonna make money. The publisher puts out what they put out because it makes them money. And if they put out less, they make less. And if they make less, they're gonna go away. Now, I don't know what they make digitally. Digitally, I'm talking. This is strictly just print. Um, digitally, who knows? I don't know what the profit margin is on that. I kind of know what the profit margin is on like a
Honestly,
single.
probably not that much because they give it
It's
away.
Well, it's nothing. I mean,
Yeah.
you think about what the stores pay, right? The stores get about, I think, like 40 to 50%. That's what of the cover price. That's what they pay, right? And then you have to think about what cut does the distributor take. So at the end of the day, what is a publisher really making on a single issue? Not as much. I think they make more on the trades, but that also costs more for them to print. But you have to, like, for me, like, the reason I'm also hesitant to go digital is because, like, for me, like, I'm gonna spend $4 on a digital comic, and I somewhat own it. I own it in a digital file. I can't resell that digital file. For me, like, during this pandemic, like, I wasn't working. I needed money. What was I able to do? I was able to go to my comic book collection, and I was able to sell a lot of it. You can't do that if it's digital. So, like, there's no investment in it. To me, it's like, and maybe that's selfish of me to think, like, well, like, who cares about the planet because I won't be able to sell it. But, like, it helped me a lot. Like, for me, like, to spend $500 on digital comic books, at the end of the day, what all I did was I gave $500 to the publisher. If I spend $500 on print comic books, I have the ability to possibly sell it. Maybe not always will I be able to get all my money back, but I can get some of it back. And that was very evident in what happened during the pandemic, and being like I said, I have 9 short boxes behind me that are listed on eBay. I probably sold like 10 to 12 short boxes of comic books during the pandemic, over time. And I would not have been able to do that if I was buying digital. And maybe that, like I said, maybe that's kind of selfish of me. Maybe that's only thinking about it in terms of money, but I think that that's also a huge factor in people buying digital or buying print. Is they're like, a lot of people probably think the same way I do, and, like, well, I don't really own it. You know what I mean? Like, there's no, you can't really collect digitally. And I think that a huge thing of comic books is the fact that they're collecting. And yeah, there are some people that collect omnibus. There are some people that collect hardcovers. You're right. That there is a collectability there as well. I don't really hear it as much with trades. I think people maybe prefer to read that way in trade. I will be honest with you, I wouldn't be mad if it all went to trade. I wouldn't. If books went all to trade, like, I'd be cool with that too. But I think shops would hate that because they don't. You know what I mean? Like, who's
Yeah, they
gonna?
won't be able. It's in like a question of money,
Right.
and that's 100% true. But like you said, I'm always trying to find the positive, so I'm always trying to find a solution, right? I'm
Yeah.
always trying to
Yeah.
think, and like I said, it's just a matter of future because where is the world going right now? Like, we're in the middle of a pandemic, right? And at some point, right now, we don't talk as much about the environment as we did before, but at some point this subject is going to come back on the table. And I'm not sure if the comic industry is going to survive if we don't explore the digital space. And I'm not, like, if I'm being totally honest, I prefer reading paper. That's 100% true. I'm just thinking, like I said, are we gonna survive? Is the comic industry gonna survive if we stick always to paper, plastic, and the current system of everything that's putting out there? You know?
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I
Like, do
just
you really think that the comic industry is gonna survive if we stick the way that we are right now?
that I don't think. And that's definitely a topic I want to talk with you. I think next episode is talking about growing readership. I think growing readership is what needs to
Yeah.
change. But that's definitely a topic I would, I've been wanting to talk to you about because I think we'll both have very different perspectives coming from, like, when we started reading comics, right? Like, I started early 90s, you started in the 2000s. So it's completely different eras, you know what I mean? Completely different generation. So, but yeah, I think that the comic industry does need to change. But if you look at the numbers, a lot of people, the percentage of digital readers is a fraction of what print readers are. And I don't necessarily think that people that read print will move to digital if that's the only option. I
So
think that there are some people that are stuck in their ways and will just not read comics. because they don't, especially like, and I know that we can't, like I said, we've said before, you can't just cater to the older audience, but the older audience is mainly what buys comics, and this is why I talk about we have to grow younger readership, because younger readers are the people that are going to buy comics in 10, 15, 20 years. It's not going to be these older readers, because these older readers, like, sorry to say, they may not be alive. You know what I mean? But yeah, I mean, the numbers are just not the same, and it's like we have to think about, like, I know I keep saying this, but I like going to a comic book shop. If it's only digital, there's no comic book shop. There's no purpose.
But I'm not saying that everything should be digital. I'm just saying the singles. And
I know, but the singles are what brings the money. I'm just saying,
yeah,
for working at a shop from that perspective. If there's no single issues, there's digital and then trade, then why comic book store? Go to a bookstore.
no, okay, first of all, I think that there will always be comic store, like a store specialized in comics for trades, because I don't know if how it is in the States, but here in Canada, the regular bookstore has a really, really limited section for comics, and it's usually Marvel and DC. You will never find, or almost never find, independent. I
Oh
think there's
wow.
only one bookstore, like a regular bookstore in Montreal, that carries a large amount of comics. And if I go to small bookstore, like really just a regular bookstore, but smaller, like local bookstore, they don't carry a lot of comics. The ones that they do, they identify as comic store. And that's why I think that there will always be specified comic store, even if we switch to trades, because, or I mean, I don't know, either bookstore are gonna um, expand, or you're always gonna have like a bookstore specialized in comic books. Um, but do you think that how it is currently with the singles, that it's gonna stay do you think, how can I say this? Um, the way that we use singles right now, and I'm thinking, I have difficulties to word my question.
Okay.
So if we maybe we can compromise and split 50-50. So saying, for example, that some, like the regular covers or whatever, the regular edition of singles are digital, but then the variant things are going to be in print. You know what I mean?
I see where you're going with that, but the problem is like, okay, I know something that really pissed you off, and it's the Department of Truth variant that was the homage to Something Is Killing the Children. But what you have to understand is the store has to order
100 copies.
100 copies to get that, so that's costing them more. Whereas maybe they would have only bought 80 copies to have in the store for their subscribers, right, and for the shelf. Now, in order to get that, they have to order more. So if it's going to cost them more, they charge more. We got 3 of those at the store. So that means we ordered 300 copies of that fucking book.
But why though? Why make it? I know it brings more money to the publisher and like whatever. But why doing that?
You just answered it. That's
I
why.
Yes, but
It's look, it's to prop up their numbers, right? Because they know that the publishers are playing the speculator game too, man. They know that the stores will order it because the stores can sell it for more, and then also that makes their numbers go higher, and if their numbers go higher, it makes the book look like it's better, so then it goes to a second printing. Dude, they're playing the game. They are totally playing the game, because they don't make money on back issues. They don't make money if I buy a book and I bought it for $4. It costs the publisher the same amount of money to publish it. I'm making $400 off a $4 book, right? They don't see that money. So the only way they can kind of get in on that is if they make it like, well, we're only going to give you one of those if you buy 100. So that's how they're making their money. So they're playing the game. They're totally playing it. Same with DC. Look at what DC's been doing with their Joker War and their Punchline and all that bullshit.
yeah,
Or with Marvel and, oh, this is the first appearance of Miles Morales' baby sister. Get the fuck out of here. Who cares?
I guess that part of my I mean, part of this reflection that I have about going digital comes from this anger of like,
Yeah.
why do you do that to your readers, right? Like it's so against, it's infuriating to think about that. And I am like, I'm not frustrated by the store. I totally get why it's so expensive.
Yeah.
I'm angry that it's even a thing of producing one for 100 and like pushing to get. And I get that it's all about money and that we need money to survive and stuff like that, but I think it's going too far. And
Yeah.
I don't see how. I mean, I maybe it's just where like my surroundings and like people who evolve around me, but I hear more and more about how we should cut our not cut our expenses, but cut our consumption and like try and not buy what we need and stuff, not buy what we don't need and stuff like that. And I don't get how the comics industry right now, as it is right now, fit in that state of mind, which is mostly brought by millennials. And how can we what's the generation after millennials? Gen Z, I think. And
Generation. Yeah, I don't
yeah, I
remember.
think it's
After
Z.
us, I have no
Yeah.
idea.
Anyway, so how will we be able to keep this audience if the comic industry can't follow this mentality, right? And that's just what I'm afraid of. Is like if we stick to the old ways and never evolve, I don't think we're gonna be able to keep going with where people were going.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's a common theme in every time you and I talk. No matter what topic we're going to talk about, that's going to come up. Is that if nothing changes, nothing's going to change. You know what I mean? I hate it's a cliche, but it's true.
But
Nothing
exactly,
changes if nothing changes, dude. You like you're talking about like corporations. They don't give a shit. All they
I
care
know.
about is that they're making money. If it doesn't make money, bye. That's pretty much what it is. Look what DC's doing. AT&T owns DC. They don't care. Like the bottom line is they don't care if like they're not even losing money. They're making money, but like it's such a small drop in the bucket to them that like if they stop publishing DC Comics, oh well. We own the rights. We'll go make $1 billion movie. You know, to them it doesn't matter. Marvel, I will give this. Disney, it's clear that Disney cares about the comic book side because like they still focus a lot and they care enough to make a variety of comics where they make a book like Moon Girl and Dinosaur or they make a book like Unbeatable Squirrel Girl. Like they care about like getting all the audiences. Disney is DC is kind of doing it with their YA stuff, but I mean, at the end of the day, they care. It seems like they care more about the book market, which goes back to what I was saying that they don't necessarily need. It seems like they don't care about direct market. They're fine with being in an Amazon. They're fine with being in a Barnes and Noble. You talked about in where in Montreal, like they don't like in major bookstores they don't, but the bookstores out here that are left, which is not many, like big bookstores, they have a massive comic book section. Barnes and Noble has multiple aisles of comic books. They have tables that are dedicated to promoting whatever show or movie or to coincide with that. Their manga sections are huge as well. I know for me personally, I want to have a comic book store. That's something that I want in the future. I won't have single issues. I already told my manager, I told Nick, I'm like, dude, this fucking stupid variant bullshit and these speculators, like, I don't even want to deal with it. I'm cool with not having any single issues in my store. I will only have hardcovers and trade paperbacks. Like, it will be a comic book store. Like, that's what I kind of want to do, and a cafe there as well, you know?
Okay, so if we think about what everything we talked in this 40 minutes, right? So we talked about scalpers. We talked about comic stores not existing anymore, and we talked about the collectability of singles and stuff like that. I think that everything is linked, right? Like if we change one thing, other things are gonna change. And I don't know, and maybe it's because I'm too positive. I don't know. But I believe that at some point, for example, if the comic industry decide to change towards singles, digital, and only trade paperback, hardcover, printed, the consumer is gonna get used to it. Maybe not now, maybe not immediately, but at some point it's gonna get used to it. like you said, this human contact. We talked about that too, like the having this human contact when you go to a store versus buying digitally. And so that's why I'm not sure that even if you remove singles, that a comic store won't be able to survive, because there's still so much to a comic store, right? You'll be able to have this human contact, and it's always nice to go to a specialized store and having recommendations and stuff like that.
Hmm.
So like I said, maybe I'm too positive, but if we remove everything that is currently feeding this scalper's world and stuff like that, there won't be a need to look for singles, and there won't be a need to go to the like having the highest bidder and stuff like that. People will read comics for comics, and you'll be able to target a different audience and a different readership. And by targeting a different readership, you'll be able to grow a different readership. And it's all connected. And I don't know, I guess change is going to come at some point. But
Yeah.
I don't believe that comic store won't be able to survive. I mean, we are in a pandemic, and yes, it is really hard right now for every local stores, but they're still kind of surviving, right? We adapt to things. That's why I think if we remove singles, we'll get the best of comics with all the scalpers and fighting for having a fucking variant cover that's one for 100, and it's
Yeah.
selling for currently $110 US. I don't know. I guess I'm on the positive. I'm really young too, so I guess that it's the
I don't
young person
I
in
don't
me.
I don't think so. I don't think age has anything to do with it. I think you just have, and I think that that's something you shouldn't lose. You should always keep that, positivity that you have. I think that that's something that it's what makes you you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I like that about you. And maybe I'm more on and this is the difference between Lauren and I, right? Like she's more the positive person. I'm more of like the realist, or I tend to take, I don't want to say necessarily am I negative. I look at it like it's like this is what it is, and sometimes it's to my benefit and sometimes it's to my detriment. But I do think that, like, you know the spec these kind of books are what are keeping comic book stores afloat. Like what, and I don't want to get too into it. I know I feel like I'm kind of circling back a little bit, but like what makes a comic book store stand out if there's no single issues? That's what's different about a comic book store is they have single issues. If they don't have single issues and they have the same thing that a Barnes and Noble has, why do you go there as opposed to there? Why do you go into a comic book store as opposed to Amazon where you get a better discount? Because not everybody cares about having that connection. I do. Like that's what I like working about this at the store. I don't even care so much about the discount. You know what I mean? Which is cool. Like I love that I can get comics a little bit cheaper, but like I like talking to people about comic books. That's why I do this channel. That's why I talk to you guys online. Like I didn't have that before the shop. Like now I have it even more. Like it's not just you and Dylan or Trevor or whoever is a part of the site. Like I have all these new people that I can talk to about comics. I have all these new people I can share my passion with and recommend stuff. But do the majority of people really care about that? I think that the newer generations don't care. You like it, but the majority of younger people, I feel like if they can save money, they'll be like, I'll go to Amazon.
Yeah. I
I
guess
can get 30% off over there. You know what I mean? Like I'll save my money and I don't even have to leave my house.
I know that you're right. I just don't want you to be right.
And
um
I wish I wasn't right. You know what I mean? As much as I like being right most of the time, I do enjoy being right. I wish that we could have. I wish that your ideas and my ideas, we could put them together and make something new from that
but
and
okay,
have
so
something
what
different.
about what about like I said, having a part that's digital and having a special thing that's printed. So for example, variant covers, or but I mean that's the I know that this idea is difficult because for example, if we want to keep this those variant covers that are 1 for 100, how do you keep that if the regular covers are digital, right? It like how do you is it because the store sells 100? Like how do you figure it out? But I'm sure that at some point somewhere someone can figure out how to keep these special things that makes a comic store special, so variant covers, type of singles or whatever, but bring the majority on digital and helping the community and the industry to evolve while having while compromising and having both best of both worlds, right? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I'm sure someone somewhere can send me a message and helping me figure out this type of idea and telling me why or why not it wouldn't work. But I'm 100% sure that there's a solution, and maybe it's not going digital, and maybe it's not removing every singles, but I'm 100% convinced that singles are part of the problem for like environment, future, and scalpers. Like 200% singles are part of the problem in the industry.
Yeah, I mean,
Although they are really fun to collect, they are part of a problem. They create a problem.
I mean, yes, and it's see, you're looking at it as like the single issues are the problem in the environment. Yes, the people that hike the prices up are, in my eyes, are the problem. It's not so much that there's a single issue out. It's these people that hike it up. Now, I think the variants should stop. I think that that's one thing that needs to stop. Stop putting out 10 fucking covers for one book.
Totally
That
agree.
that is, to me, that's the problem. You can still have collectability with the issue itself. It doesn't need to have 10 covers.
But was it always like I'm wondering, like, did we always have this many variant covers? Like,
When
where did it go wrong?
in the 90s,
Okay.
I am literally seeing the same thing that when I was a kid, it's happening again. And in the 90s, Marvel went bankrupt and the industry crashed. The comic book industry there was a huge speculator bubble, and people were buying hundreds of copies of this issue. This book's hot. This is going to be worth money. They did it as an investment, and it popped. All those comic books that people thought were going to fucking put their kids through college or they were going to retire on, they're worth nothing now. They're worth a quarter, 50 cents a dollar, right? And this thing is going to happen again, and the bubble will pop, and we're going to see. I mean, it's just a matter of time. It's literally the same pattern of what happened when I was a kid in 93 to 94, maybe 95, and it's just a matter of time. It's really like, look, this is, and I think that unless you have something else, I'll let you can have the last word. I'll share my last thoughts. My last thoughts are, reducing the line is not a bad idea. Reduce it. And then maybe some of these titles that you're not necessarily 100% sure, is it going to sell a lot? Do we need to print thousands of copies of this book? Do digital first. And if it does well digitally, release a trade. I'm cool with that. But I think that I don't think you can get rid of single issues altogether in print. I think that they need to be there in order for comic book stores to stay open, at least for the time being. Now, I think it needs to be a slow change if they are to do what you're suggesting. But I think that right now for comic book stores, it's a very difficult time. They're not making the same money they used to. The hours of the shop are not the same of where I work. We used to be open till 7. We close at 6. We used to be open 7 days a week. We're open 6 days a week. So like to make any kind of a drastic change now would not be beneficial to shops. I think that this change that you're suggesting is something that would go over time. But I am all for reducing the amount of comic books that are produced on a monthly basis. It's out of control. The variants are out of control. And if the publishers don't change it, the market will change it for them, just like it did in the 90s. Exactly like it. Look up a magazine called Wizard. Look up Wizard Magazine. Look up a channel that I watch, Cartoonist Kayfabe. Watch some of their Wizard Magazine, kind of like what I do on the channel, where I go through a book and I go page by page. They do it with Wizard Magazine, and that magazine started in 1991, the beginning of Image Comics. And it will show you. It'll show you exactly what we're talking about right now. All these variant covers, these special covers, the speculators. You will trip out to see that it's exactly the same today as it was back then. It's just a matter of time for the market to kind of correct itself. But I think that we need a combination of the market correcting itself and the publishers coming together and like figuring out a way to change the industry. Because you're right, something needs to change because we can't keep doing the same thing that not only took place in the 90s, but the same model that's been going on since the direct market started in the 80s or 70s or something. But that's all I got. That's my last thought.
I really love everything that you said. It's like for today's episode, you have the perfect ending words, and I love the idea that you said that if you're not sure about a series, um, do it digitally first, and then if it goes well, do the trade. That would be a really great starting point. And cutting back and everything that you said is perfect, I guess. But I think that, like you said, when you're, because let's be honest, not every series are freaking awesome.
No, there's a
And
lot of garbage out there.
and I'm 100% sure that publishers know that. Like, they know which ones are gonna take and which ones are not. And it would be difficult to do a first, like a statistic market and stuff like that, and know which one to release digitally and which one to release paper first. And I think that would be a really first step to see how it goes, and then slowly adapting the market to it.
Right.
Because like you said, it needs to change, 100% agree, and it needs to change slowly, but I think that idea would be a really great start. I really love that idea.
Thank you. It's just my observations from being a fan of comic books for so long and watching, and like I said, like I've always like the industry itself has fascinated me. So I've always paid attention to these things that like happen over the years and the ups and downs. And now being in I've worked in shops when I was a kid, when I was like 13, 12. But now that I'm older, I pay attention to the business side of it. That's the only reason why I kept coming back at you with like different responses, because I'm seeing it from behind, a little bit behind the scenes. I mean, like, change needs to happen. I think that's the message of this episode. And
we might not have the right answers, but we are sure that change needs to happen.
Exactly. And if you guys aren't already, make sure you follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at The Comic Lounge. Make sure you follow Jen at Life of a Geeky Mind on Instagram. Throw your comments or suggestions down below on the topic that we shared today. If you guys have any ideas or topics you'd love us to talk about, throw those down below as well, or email us, thecomicloungepod@gmail.com. Make sure you subscribe and hit the bell icon so you're notified every time a new episode goes up. And on that note, we're out.